Welcome back, everybody, to the Skin Deep podcast. I am your host. I am Wes, and I've got my guest here, Iggy. How you doing this morning, brother?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. Just trying to stay warm.
Totally. Getting that first sip of coffee always hits so good with temperatures out there like this.
I know, man. I know. So it's super cool to have you on here.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. For those of you who don't know, so I've been tattooing 27 years. Iggy, I believe you've been tattooing longer, correct?
Yeah, I just entered my 31st.
All right. So we've got a true Columbus OG tattooer on here. So it'll be interesting to talk about kind of the history and changes that both of us have seen. Have you tattooed, has your entire career been here in Columbus?
It has. Yep.
Awesome. Before you landed an apprenticeship, so that puts you at 22 then, if I'm doing my math right, because you just had a birthday.
Yep.
Was there a career path you were on prior to becoming a tattooer?
Yeah. So I'm actually from Florida. I'm from Miami. And during high school, I ended up getting a scholarship to the Columbus College of Art and Design in downtown. So that's how I ended up in Columbus.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's how I ended up here anyway. But during my sophomore year at school, I ended up meeting Lars Johansson, who was the original owner or the owner of Viking Tattoo, which is now evolved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how him and I ended up becoming friends during my sophomore year, and he started tattooing during that time. So that's kind of how I started tattooing. It wasn't even something that I was looking for. It just kind of fell on my lap. He opened up the very first tattoo shop on Ohio State campus, like I said, called Viking Tattoo. And then I was his first and only apprentice.
That's awesome.
So that's how that all ended up, happening. We had our first studio right up above. I'm about to show my age real good here. Right up above Used Kids Records.
Yep. Yeah, I remember it was on the second floor.
Yeah, it was on the second floor. So that was our very first shop. And that's where I started my career.
That's awesome, man. So did you end up graduating from CCAD, or did tattooing just take off?
I didn't. Yes. Thank God it all worked out. I ended up dropping out my third year to pursue tattooing full time. And of course, I'm super grateful that I did. I mean, part of it too was I was just going into such debt that I was like, man, I need to find a way out of this. So obviously tattooing was a blessing. Fell on my lap, and I started to pursue that. And then after my third year, I just dropped out. And like I said, thank God it worked out.
So I started, for the most part, kind of over on the north end of town, a little rougher area, and then opened a shop on the east side in a semi-rough area. You were on campus. What were those days like? Was the clientele mostly literally college students, or, I mean?
Funny. Yeah, there's a big difference, right? And I know what you're speaking of, because I worked on the Northeast end for almost 6 years, and I worked out on the Lower East end for the better part of a year. So I know what you mean in terms of, how location obviously, right, affects business, or, the type of clientele that you get. And I'm not saying that it's either good or bad. It's just different.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Campus, you got your share of college students. I recall, like, we would have walk-in days on Saturdays. It would usually be on Saturdays. And there would be days where, we'd have a line at the door waiting before we even opened, down towards Dunkin' Donuts. So, it was definitely a college vibe, obviously. But we also, the longer that we were there, we also, tattooed, for example, professors. Some professors would come in. The local employees of, shops, which at times were also, college students, would come in and get tattooed. But it was definitely very much like a college vibe. At times, you'd have that party vibe as well, where people would be coming in, kind of, you get that sense that, they're trying to get tattooed before they're going out for the night, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So yeah, it was definitely different. But that's really where I cut my teeth. I spent a lot of hours, working 10, 12-hour days, sometimes just doing small walk-in tattoos. And that's really where I got, my first layers of experience, those first, 3 to 4 to 5 formative years during that time were really important, because I was doing anything and everything. And I know that you know what I'm talking about. It's not like how it is today, where kids are just wanting to do their niche and that's it. They're not wanting to expand outside of that. And again, I'm not judging. I'm not saying that that's bad or good. It's just a comparison. When we were kids, when we were just getting started, it was a lot different.
Yeah, no, if I remember talking to Scotty about this, and it was, back in the day, so to speak, tattooing, it wasn't as broad artistically.
Right.
And so that spectrum of what people were getting tattooed, if you wanted to put food on your table, you had to know how to do it all. Like, the word no couldn't come out of your mouth. Like, it was yes and fake it till you make it. I did a lot of shitty tattoos back in the early days, but to cut your teeth so you could be a well-rounded tattooer. I mean, it was funny. I remember, and of course it wasn't as popular. So,
Right.
you talk about, people bitching now, like, oh, the slow season. I'm like, bro, I remember sitting at the shop 8 hours a day for 4 days in a row and not doing a tattoo.
Right.
My wife literally knew how busy it was based on what 6-pack of beer I brought home. If I brought home Natty Light, she knew I did maybe one tattoo.
That's hilarious.
If we had a busy ass Friday or something, it was a 6-pack of Heineken, and she knew we killed it.
Totally. It's interesting. I think a lot about this, obviously, with the way that things are, and just how different that they are. I definitely believe, and I'm sure you'll agree. I would say, like, tattooing is definitely going through this renaissance, period, this renaissance era. I would say maybe the past decade or so, right? Because we are seeing such an expansion of what can be done and the different types and styles. And like, there's now, subgenres that are coming out of, your pillar genres, like, black and gray realism, Japanese, American traditional, even neo-traditional now is considered to be one of the pillars, right, of the foundations of tattooing. And you're seeing so many other subgenres coming out of and branching out of that sort of tattooing family tree that, people are getting things that, right, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we couldn't even fathom, right? Things have shifted and changed so much.
Absolutely. What do you think about the scene here in Columbus? I mean, so when you were tattooing, there were probably less than, when you started, I would say less than 15 shops in the city. Because I know when I opened up Body Language in '99, I think we were the 25th shop in Columbus.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy what's happening in Columbus, and you can't not see it. It's wild, but it makes sense, right? Like, you think about us and like our time coming up. I look back at like the early 90s and what tattooing was like in Columbus. And I remember at the time when Viking opened up, its shop, and the way that Lars sort of approached doing tattoos. Yeah, it paid homage to, those who came before us, but at the same time, he wanted to be, and he was in his thought process and in his mind, wanting to be innovative within the tattooing community here in Columbus. And we were always constantly, as I'm sure maybe you were, trying to find different ways to sort of change the process or change the approach to try to make tattooing more original, because we knew that as art students, we knew that if we were able to push the envelope, that it would expand out, right? And then the creativity would grow.
Yeah.
And that now it's like that times 1,000 on crack. It's incredible the amount of artists from other genres, for example, painters and illustrators, glass blowers, graphic designers. It's crazy how many people have gravitated to this genre, especially here in Columbus, and how much it's grown. And then, I can't help but like give, Derb a shout out in terms of, the things that he's done and accomplished for the city in terms of, having eyes put on Columbus nationally in terms of drawing people here. And it's become, Columbus has become one of the Midwest meccas of tattooing. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. There are, and I think
And
it's
it's
cool.
not just Derb either, right? I mean, it's not just Derb, right? I don't, of course I'm giving him a shout out, but it's all of us, right? Our community of OGs have really sort of paved the way, in my opinion, and it's my humble opinion, but in my opinion, we've helped to pave the way for how things are now, for all of these younger artists who are getting involved in tattooing and doing the things that they're doing. It's partly due to the fact that all of us, as a community, have expanded the interest in tattooing.
100%. And there are so many amazing tattooers in so many different styles that first off, when somebody comes to me with something that's not in my style genre, like that I don't have a lot of in my portfolio, or even if it is in my genre, I mean, the fact at this point, and I'm just grateful. I'm like, you could have picked literally 200 different people to do this tattoo. The fact that you chose me to do it and give me your money and your trust definitely humbles me. And B, I know some people, you get some of the curmudgeons who are like, oh, it's oversaturated, blah, blah, blah. These new kids who are kicking ass, that shit keeps me on my toes. Sometimes it keeps me up at night. Like if somebody comes to me, I just did Sally Slater. It's a poster in the Haunted Mansion in Disney World.
Yeah, I saw it. It was a great piece.
Thank you.
Super colorful, yeah.
Dude, this is an oil painting that needs to be rendered on skin, which is not what I'm known for.
Right.
When we finished, I never told her this during the 5 sessions it took. I was like, you do realize, because she loved it, and I was super stoked on how it turned out. I was like, you do realize I've literally lost sleep every night before our sessions. Like, not even a joke. Like, I'm dreaming of what I'm going to execute just because of, and I think it kind of goes back to, there's so many heavy hitters here in Columbus. Like, at 27 years doesn't mean shit. I have to bring my A game today, not what I did yesterday. It's nuts.
I couldn't agree more. And I feel exactly the same way. As things continue to grow and we're seeing these shifts in tattooing and its community and how it's growing, and it is going through growing pains. I will say that right off the bat, Columbus is experiencing a sense of growing pain, and some artists are going to feel a little bit displaced, right? Because maybe they're not drawing in as much of a crowd as they once used to. But to your point, it completely and utterly makes sense. You have to stay on your toes and you have to stay sharp with what you're doing, and you have to believe in yourself and you have to believe in your skills, especially as we're getting older. I mean, tattooing, like any other industry, there is an expiration date. There's a shelf life, and eventually, time may come to retire. In my opinion, or how I feel about things, it's till the wheels fall off, right? Because I love what I do and I've been loving it for over 30 years. But at the same time, doing crazy, hyper precise realism that I've been doing and I'm known for forever. Maybe eventually my eyes and my hands aren't going to keep up with the demand, but I'm sure as hell going to try to stay as sharp as I can and try to stay as healthy as I can so that I can continue, doing those things to the best of my ability. And the way that I look at it, secondly, is it's not that there is competition. Yes, there is. Of course there is. Any industry is going to have that, especially as it grows. But the competition mostly stays within myself. It's what am I trying to accomplish? Why am I doing this? Why am I tattooing? Why am I continuing to tattoo? And where is my love and passion for it? And that in and of itself, that question alone should give me enough drive to either continue doing it or get off the pot, right? It's one or the other. But watching these kids that are insanely talented, like you said, killing it, should be looked upon as inspiration, and it should be looked upon as encouragement, and should also be looked upon as with a sense of pride, because those kids may not be doing what they're doing if it wasn't for us, right? Trying to push the boundaries of tattooing in the 90s and in the early 2000s, I just feel like, it's all, culminating into what's occurring now, and it's a sight to behold. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I would love to. I mean, I don't know how it would get done, who has the time, but I'd love to map out the Columbus family tree of tattooing. Just like, when I'm talking to some people and they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I went to Greystone. I'm like, yeah, I love Richard, man. He worked for me for 8 years or whatever. And they're like, Richard Cook worked for you? I'm like, yeah, man, like for sure. Or yeah, I just went to Enzo. I'm like, Kevin Stress, man. I love that guy. I worked with him. He worked for me for 5 years. And he's like, he worked for you? And it's like all these shop owners who worked for me, who now have owned shops for so long that people under them now own great shops.
Right.
And of course, we're talking, another shout out to Derb. I mean, how many people came out of his
totally
family tree, and just seeing, pardon me, seeing where it goes. And I think we definitely talked about, because one of the questions I wanted to ask was what positive things, what negative things, if any, have you seen with this explosion of tattooing in Columbus?
I know that if you were to ask me when I was young this same question, in terms of like, if I was young now, like with what's occurring now, I know that I would more than likely feel like I'm sure a lot of these young artists feel. So just a disclaimer in terms of what I'm about to say. And again,
Sure.
I'm not judging. I truly believe that people, as long as they're not hurting other people, they should do whatever it is that they feel is what's calling them and what's true to them. Because that's how I try to live my life. But if I were to say anything negative about what's occurring now, is this. I know that, there's a lot of young tattooers who are now expanding into these like, parlor or slash salon lofts kind of spaces, which is great. If you can maintain and sustain yourself, and having just your own personal space that you're renting out, and you don't have to worry about, having a shop owner to deal with. I mean, by all means, have at it. But I feel like if you're not a traditionally taught tattooer or tattoo artist, you're gonna miss out on a little bit. You're gonna miss out on some things. You're gonna miss out on that formal training and learning. The even with the YouTube era of today or the Instagram era of today, yes, you can sit and watch videos all day long about learning how to tattoo that are free, and you're going to get a ton of information, but you're still going to miss out on some very important little nuggets of knowledge that you're not going to get on YouTube, in my opinion. Maybe you can, I just haven't seen it. So I feel like you're going to miss out. So if you're self-taught or if you're self-trained, and you haven't gone through a formal apprenticeship, and you haven't worked alongside other tattoo artists who are also learning, or who have maybe a couple of years or 5 years or 10 years worth of experience over you, where you can learn hands-on by watching them and asking them questions, I just feel like you're missing out. I think another thing that you're missing out on by not taking that route is you're missing out on what you were just discussing, the lineage and the heritage that you're inheriting by becoming a tattoo artist in our city. You're missing out on that part. You're not truly connecting to the ancestry and the history and the lineage that you're inheriting, and you're missing out on a certain sense of camaraderie that, Wes, you and I share, because you and I are right? We really don't know each other that well. We know
No.
of each other, right? We know of
Yeah.
each other, but we share a lineage. We share a history in Columbus tattooing, which creates a bond between us, whether we like it or not, or whether we are the best of friends or not. And there's something special about that, don't you think?
100%. And my negative goes to that exactly as well. I think I look at jumping in, and again, not throwing shade. Again, if you're not hurting anybody or whatever, do what you want to do.
Absolutely.
But you're missing the benefits of compounding interest. Of what did I teach? Let's just, for example, Joey, who I work for. I sold body language to him. So I apprenticed Joey. And he was my first apprentice, and I apprenticed more people. And as I apprenticed a few more people, I got better at being an mentor.
Right.
And then Joey moved to Philly, got to see other great tattooers. Then when he opened a shop and took on an apprentice, he took what I taught him. He took what other OGs taught him and refined the apprenticeship. And we just did a podcast with Connor McKinney, who's a tattooer, but I had a separate podcast about his apprenticeship done, it's done right. This is what a real apprenticeship should be. And it's like, I see him when he's working with his current apprentice, Kat, and him explaining something to her. And I'm like, I remember giving him that nugget, but not as detailed. He's been able to expand it. And Kat, when she eventually tattoos and takes on an apprenticeship, is going to take that nugget and expand it even deeper, tweaked with what her personal twist on how and why that worked. And when you get 5 or 6 people in a studio who've all experienced that, a week doesn't go by that I'm not asking one of the tattooers at Sacred Hand some piece of advice on how I would how to execute this tattoo. Like, hey man, I'm thinking about going through and lining this with a tight 5 and then sculpting with an old school 9, or do you think I should just go straight in with a 9? Or what color composition? Hey, I got this killer green dragon. It already has purple background. What are you thinking about color on the belly? Here's my 2 choices, and 3 people chime in. They're like, dude, bright as fuck pink. And I'm like, there we go. You got it. It's collaboration mentally.
Exactly.
When you're in I don't want to say real tattoo. When you're in a tattoo shop, when you're not in a solo parlor unit, I think I agree with you. You're missing out on
so much
growth and growth time. You can shorten the span of becoming a greater tattooer quicker by working with more tattooers. And of course, then, like you said, there's something really cool about camaraderie. And to clarify what you said for the listeners, Iggy and I only know each other by name. Like,
right.
We've never shared a coffee. We've never had a beer. Maybe accidentally.
Well, we're sharing a coffee now.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's definitely part of it. I'm going to wrap this up with the last question. Do you still use coils? And if you don't, why? And I will preface this by saying I was loyal to the coil, and then I got my hands on a Cuban rotary, and I have never looked back. I love the versatility of the cartridges. I love that I can use the right tool for the right line at any given time. Back in the day, if I needed to do 2 lines in a tattoo with a tight 3, I was not going to set up another machine. It was just going to be done with a 5, and I was going to make the tattoo happen. Now I can pull out that tight 3, do those 2 little eyelashes, and the tattoo's just that much better. So are you still loyal to the coil? If not, why not?
So I haven't touched a coil machine, and I can't tell you how long. As soon as rotary machines, here, I'll back up a little bit. So I worked for Carmelo over at Body Stain for 5.5 years in the middle of my career. And he was always wanting to get the next innovative tool. He was always, I'm sure he still is. He's always like looking for that next best machine. So I went from coil machines to pneumatic machines, air powered machines. So we messed with pneumatic machines for a long time. And that ignited my fire in terms of like wanting to find a different, different technology, different machines to use to achieve the same thing. So we worked with pneumatics for a while. And then from there, the pen came out, the tattoo machine pen came out. And just like you, man, I haven't looked back. I started with FK Irons pen machines, and now I work with the Critical Torque, which is like an all-in-one. And I absolutely love it. And I'll tell you the biggest reason, two reasons why I love pens versus coil machines. And not that there's anything wrong with coil machines at all, right? Plenty of tattoo artists still using them, making incredible pieces of art with them.
Agreed.
What I love about pen machines or the Critical Torque in specific, it's just like how you were saying that the cartridge change up is super fast, super quick. I can use several different, needle types on the same project while I'm working. And then, the second thing that's just really amazing about it is, the hand balance. And we can all agree coil machines, you have, whether they're heavy or light, because they're so top heavy on the hand, it's going to cause a lot of pressure, and a lot of strain on the wrist. Using a pen machine, it's like using a large marker. The vibration is minimized, right? The fine tuning of control in terms of depth and speed and amperage is so precise that you can make minor adjustments and you can see big changes. And I mean, I just can't speak highly enough about the transformation that has occurred in tattooing in terms of technology. It's just been incredible. But I want to add one little thing and something that you spoke about before, just because I feel like I keep thinking about it, and I just want to add. Did you watch Paul Booth's Honest Tattooer podcast? There was a clip. Well, there was a clip where he talked about, and I just wanted to mention back in terms of like the history of tattooing, and he talked about something that you had just mentioned, which is the tattooing family tree, and he talks about how like that is gone, that will no longer be something that can be achievable, because tattooing in its history has branched out so much, and there's so many more tattooers now that people aren't honoring. And I'm not saying that this is happening here in Columbus. I'm just saying this is what he said, that people aren't honoring their lineage anymore. So therefore, the lineages of people are getting lost. I agree with you. I think that would be such a cool project to happen here in Columbus, to have create some kind of documentation of the lineage of tattooing here in Columbus, so that we can continue honoring it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that.
No, very cool. Dude, I really, really appreciate you taking time out this morning to join me on the podcast. For all of our listeners, if they want to check you out, get tattooed by you, etc., how is the best way that they can find you?
To make it real simple, just go to www.AIONTattoo.com and you can fill out a contact form and check us out. You can also search for us on Google and check out our business page if you want. And all of those things are interconnected with social media. So, the website is just the best way to go, and it's AIONTattoo.com. I appreciate you letting me come on, Wes. Thanks a lot, man. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely, brother. Hopefully we get to share a coffee in person one of these days.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
Dude, have a great morning.
Thanks, man. You too.